Hello, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome. Today, we're talking about a fanfiction called Time Eats All His Children. Details about this fanfiction will be in the description below. This is around the time where Bruce is lost in the time stream. So Tim is with the League of Assassins, right? And he's training there. He's got it planned out. He's gonna leave, blow it up, right? But he sees he's kind of, well, I don't want to say slowly losing himself, but he sees how easy it could be to kind of, and he's doing this on his own, really, because after basically being said, Tim's a little unstable, Dick's like, he's a little unstable to everyone else. It's don't really got a choice in that matter, so he's doing it on his own. And so, but he has at least one friend there, which is Red Hood. And he's really the only person, he trains him, and really the only person who doesn't try and kill him. I would say low standards, but also this take what you can get. I don't know, right? So even when he's sent out on missions, Red Hood clearly holds high status, but the difference between him and everyone is even his outfit is different, right? It's a deep crimson with some gold trim, and even when he's sent out on missions, he doesn't kill. He uses rubber bullets, and it's Roz would usually never accept that kind of weakness. But that shows even more of just how different and he is from everyone else, right? And how close he is to the alcohols because he's allowed all of this, right? And so he was thinking about it because he's talking, he was thinking about it, his plan, because he's talking to, it was him, Tam, he's planning to blow it up before they leave. But they were planning, because he pitched the idea for taking, because again, only friend there, so he's fond of him now, after all the training, he's done with him personally, of convincing Red Hood to leave with them, right? He's convincing, he wants to. They're not really all that sure about it, but it's are you sure that he could do it? So he notices Red Hood heading somewhere. He decides to follow him. He sees he's heading in towards Raw's direction, right? His room, his little sanctuary. So he hops in the vents to eavesdrop on their conversation. And during there, he learns a lot. First off, he compliments, right? Because they're talking about normal things about training, how it's going, and especially with Tim, how his training's going. And he compliments him, which is rare. He doesn't compliment anyone, right? Ever. So Tim, and he gets a little flustered because he never gets complimented, which is, or praised, which is a little sad. A little sad. But as they talk, conversation slowly veers. He's like, that's not, and Red Hood brings up what he initially wanted to bring up in the first place. By the way, I want permission. It's I want to marry Danny. I was like, Tim, who the hell is Danny? Who is that? And Roz, he has confusion because, for him, he was under the impression that him and Danny were already married. Not necessarily the case, right? Because when they first came, a lot was happening, and then the kids happened, and just so much was going on. There was never a time to really get permission to marry. But that's the only thing that really, it's you need permission to marry, not to have kids. Immediately this throws Tim's plan kind of out of, off balance. Because, he was going to blow up. He was going to blow up the base. But now he can't, because at first it's oh, let's convince Red Hood and then we can leave. But now knowing he's got kids and I guess a fiance, technically speaking, obviously he's not gonna blow up basically his family. So kind of take a little sideways now, gotta rethink it. And Ross agrees, right? He has permission, but obviously not his, not, I don't want to say his blessing. He has permission, but he knows like he has to go to Talia, right, to get her blessing, because Talia is really protective of Danny and the kids, like wholeheartedly, and that's where the whole like she thinks of Danny as her own, and Jason's all like he's all too aware of this. He's like, yeah, that's why I doubled up on armor. He's way too aware of this, and this is where he says to bring Danny and the kids to dinner, make it a family event. He wants to refuse, but obviously Roz. He's not having it, right? It's an order. Yeah, technically, it's more a demand, right? You can't refuse it. So he has to be there. So he leaves, and he also says to Tim, it's like, oh, you should be there. It's a family. Emphasis on family. Creepy weirdo. A family event. So, like, clearly he knew Tim was there, like, the entire time. And Tim quickly skedaddles from there. And then we get from Jason's point of view. And this is where everything's starting to click. The timeline had reset, and also Danny, but Jason is 15 again, along with Danny, right? So the timeline's reset, and they're both just kind of there in the middle of Romania. So this is like before he kind of went off, right? Okay, so he's not blown up in a warehouse. Like he's fine. He's not dead. So but they're just in the middle of Romania, and it's like, and this is like his first time meeting Danny. Never met him before whatsoever. Until he looks over, it's like, oh, hello, strange person. This is where we find out Jason, like, he thought about it for a second to go back home, right? Just kind of forget, the Hampton warehouse, whatever, right? Just to go home. But he quickly kind of puts that idea out of his mind, right? Because he's 15 again, and he's really thinking about everything that happened after that, and really how, technically he was never really accepted, never understood his point of view. It's being pushed, pull everywhere, as it just isn't what he wants, basically. And him being 15 again, he can't even pretend. He doesn't even really want to anyway, right? To pretend to be like, because he can't even really remember how he acted when he was 15. And he doesn't even really want to pretend that, like, to get in that mindset again. And he's sure, Bruce and all his paranoia will definitely sniff out, you're not the same. And think that maybe he's like under some mind control or replaced altogether. He's just not really going to go through that. Danny, we learned, oh boy, before the timeline reset, he's pregnant with Ellie and Dan, right? Same kind of destabilized, took him in, and here he is. But before the timeline reset, his parents, I guess, maybe somehow found out everything, and they had ripped Dan and Ellie from him, like they weren't even born yet. They ripped him from his stomach, which is wild. And that's what happened to him before the timer reset. And he needs to be in the mortal realm, right? But they also need like stable ectoplasm. And Jason, he's not going back, so he's like, I know where to go. Perfect pool of ectoplasm right here. Which leads into the League of Assassins, which he is greatly surprised that they just accepted them readily, open arms and everything. Like, Jason's surprised like training's not as hard. Which I mean probably equates to like his mind is like already kind of used, like he's been put through worse, so he's probably comparing it like, oh, it's not that bad. That's why he's saying it's like this isn't like it's bad, right? Because it's not like they're being gentle. I don't think they know what gentle is, right? But and Talia had taken to Danny and like really taken to him as like her own kid. Damien's still there too. They looked after him, like he was very fond of both of them too, before he had left and went to Bruce. But he ends up being there, and he gets kind of lost in it, right? Because for a year he tried keeping track of like what's happening on the outside world, heroes, whatever, right? And then after that he just kind of didn't, because the kids were born, everything just kind of, there are just other things to worry about, mainly Danny and the kid, like his family, like that's what he's more worried about than whatever's going on out there that's nothing to do with him anymore. Like, it's not his business, you know? Which is why it's like also surprised that not once did Roz or really anyone there hint, like, that, or even like maybe taunted Bruce about the fact that, oh, they have Jason, or at least know like something about him. Not once. They didn't say anything, even as like, Bruce and the others like looked for him. They didn't say anything. They kept that to themselves. Pleasantly surprised by that, you know? And so, but he never noticed how much time passed until, Tim showed up. And then he's like, oh shit. Right, the whole time train thing, which he wasn't, involved to begin with. He's like, oh, right, that happened. He's like mentally being like, okay, where was everyone during this? Like, so it kind of should be fine. Like, everything kind of worked out anyway, right? And so he had personally took it upon himself, like, to Roz, like he wanted to be the one to personally train him, and not necessarily out of affection, because like they weren't that close at all, which he doesn't blame Tim for. A lot went on between them, and trying to get around wasn't great. So he's not like, this isn't out of anything other than him wanting to kind of get to know Tim without, the pit madness, the rage, kind of whispering in his ear. Because, he's not dunked in this timeline, and he wants to keep it that way. He wants to keep it that way of him being in control of his own, like his own emotions and everything. So he but he wants to get to know Tim without it, and he's pleasantly surprised, like, as because he grows on him, right, Tim, and he notes that he's not the same kind of smug kind of like brat that he was when he first kind of knew him. He's a lot different, which probably because since he wasn't there, and since I guess from their point of view, it'd be like instead of dying, it'd just be like he just disappeared and they never saw him again, right? Like he just disappeared, can't even find him in Romania, never to see anything again. And I guess would Bruce still go off the rails then? I guess yeah, because it's not like he's not dead, but you also can't really find him at all. So, but it makes it a little. Not that Jason wants to be involved with any of that. He's got no family to worry about. The marriage in general that he's getting, well, he's more just telling Talia because he doesn't care about it. He's just telling her, right? He doesn't really care if she accepts it or not. But the marriage in general is not really necessarily out of love, though he does love Danny like a lot, and like the kids. It's more out of protection, right? Because where they are, it's more of that than anything. And he knows that Danny could protect himself, fully aware of it. Danny could easily take out anyone, right? It's fine, but hell, he kind of chooses to stay there. Like at this point, I don't think Danny really has to stay there anymore, but he does. Right? He could go back into the infinite realms, but he knows that Danny can protect himself, but he wants to still have that power to protect him. And so when he goes go to tell Talia, of course, because she took it upon herself as soon as she saw Danny, she's like, oh, she inserted herself into Danny and like the pregnancy, even though she's never been pregnant and everything, really took it under her wing. So they end up fighting, because of course they did, with, Talia, being her usual self until eventually they do, I don't want to say come to agreement, because he did state, it's like, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, like, I'm gonna marry him. That's the end of it. He does not care whatsoever. But they, she eventually does, like, just like, fine, okay, under, some conditions. The condition being, one being that she supports Damien, with him being heir. Again, Damien's not here. He's gone, like, with Bruce. But that she supports Damien, like, his right to be heir, publicly. And he's like, okay, sure. He's not really, like, involved in league politics it's like, as far as only league politics there are is like hostile takeovers, and that's like, okay. So he's like, sure, whatever. That's not like that big of a deal. It's whatever. And then the second that he finally does like stand like with his family, right? Because she knows all too well. They'll get married and then they'll slink because they're very much in the shadows. They're not very. I mean, Red Hood is like a stable like figure, definitely like passing all Red Hood, but it's like they're not very present in the public, if that makes sense. It's like, so she wants him to stand in the spotlight with Danny and the kids, which is not what they want. It's like, you can't let people be happy, but he agrees to it. And this is where she says, like, oh, for Dan and Ellie that, to tell Dan that their training will start soon. It's like they're 3, this is why Jason's like, right? But she does make a, point that he does agree with, of like, they're not safe, right? Especially if he's going to step out in public. Absolutely not. They're not going to be safe. Being related to the Algos and like being so close to them, they're going to be targets. So, and he knows, like, him and Dan, like, they can't be there 24/7, especially with how they are. So he knows this, and so he agrees to it. That they do need training. So when dinner finally comes around, you know, Roz makes his grand stand. He's like, oh, 2 announcements, right? His first being that he's making Tim the next heir, which catches Jason off guard and now makes so much more sense of why Talia was like, you'll stand with Damien, like, like him wanting, publicly to be heir. It's like, okay, now it makes sense. Because at first it's like, who the hell would ever be a threat other than like hostile takeovers? Oh, him deciding he wants Tim to be the heir. Fantastic. So of course now he's put in a position of like, no, I gotta do this. He's like, it looks over Talia. She almost kind of feels bad. Almost. I mean, not quite. I mean, like, she don't care. But it's like, Jesus, woman. So of course he publicly adjusts to this and whatever. And Ross kind of brushes it off, right? Because he brings up that Tim is obvious, like, he's an outsider. And he obviously isn't planning to stay. Like, he's leaving. Like, he wants to leave. He's softly planning to leave. So it's like, but Roz, you know, just he doesn't even flinch when he's just like, oh, he'll want to stay. You did after all. It's like, oh. And you know what? That's unfair because those are different circumstances that he stayed under. But, whatever. And then the second announcement is obviously the marriage between him and Danny, who Danny is the adopted grandson, yada yada, right? Of him. And this also gives a hint of like Tim, who Danny is, right? Because all he's known is like through the conversation between Jason and Roz, where Jason wants to marry him. They have kids already, a lot. So this is what it means, like, to stand kind of publicly and not shirk away from the spotlight and the attention, because no one has ever seen Jason's face other than like all the select few. And now, it's kind of the old habits kicking in of paranoia and not really trusting any of them anyway. But now, obviously, he's shown his face, puts the mask on the table, and this is where Tim finally is like, oh my god, Jason? Because again, haven't seen him in years. Like, hey. I mean, he doesn't say anything. Why would you, right? It's so Tim is just like left in shock that Jason is like sitting there beside him. Jason, again, like, kind of just disappeared to them, right? Because the last that Tim ever saw him, or really, like, because he read his file like a bunch of times, that he was benched, and then of course they went looking for him, right? Because they saw that he had purchased a bunch of tickets, like flight tickets, but he never got on any of them, and he was never even seen entering the airport. To them, it literally looked like Jason had just disappeared out of nowhere. And Bruce obviously went down the rabbit hole of being in despair. He was more ruthless towards people, and he went for any looking for any sign of him. But after a year, he kind of the hope died that he would find him like alive. So at this point, he's thinking he's looking for a body. Dick never really lost hope. Busted every human trafficking, drug sting, missing person case, whatever. Right? He was looking in every place. Bribing some of the kids in the alley he was bribing some kids there just to see like if they had like seen him any sign whatsoever. Cass had never met him, but she still cared for him, right? In the way of like, obviously not on the same level as Tim, Dick, or Bruce, but still of like, like I can't completely understand, but I could like that. This is a part of your life that he's missing, Uh, Damien didn't care. Damien, which is interesting because it's like he's redhead, but like Damien doesn't know that clearly because Jason never took off the mask ever until he was like so like he doesn't know that's Jason. So Damien never cared. In fact, he made a snarky comment when he first came of being like, oh, him again about him being the one son of the bad blood, whatever, right? And how it's good that he knew his place to disappear before he came. It's like, ooh, which obviously when you say that, Dick was not happy, right? Because Dick is half frantic looking for Jason. He does not care. He's still thinking, has hope he's still alive. And he is, but whatever. So him making that comment did not help with their relationship at all. But clearly they're still on. I mean, he's a kid, so maybe that's how. I mean, he's still like not a great comment to make, but still. So Tim kind of seeing him now and like marrying Danny, who again adopted whatever rates, marrying into the Al Ghul's basically. It's like, oh, and he's like going through every information, right? Okay, he's alive. He's married. He's got kids, and he's marrying into the Al Ghul's family, right? And he's seen like the kids are even treated like they're accepted and they're acknowledged too, even though out of wedlock. And he's looking at this, and he's looking at Jason too. He's like, okay, he's not like brainwashed, drugged, whatever. He's not even like fresh recruited. So the idea of getting Jason out of here is already blown. Like it's impossible now, right? Because there's no way you're getting Jason, because he's so embedded into this. There's no way you're getting Jason out of this without force. And Tim would take that chance if he had the resources, but he doesn't, right? Doesn't have the Justice League, doesn't have Bruce or really anyone to back him up. He's on his own. So he's like, there's nothing he can really do to like at all. Especially since Jason, like again, he's not drugged, not brain. He's there on his own. He's there, and this is the first time Tim's really seeing him. That like, because at first he thought if he ever found Jason alive, it would all take us just reaching out and proving like, oh yeah, we're taking him at Bruce, like we're family, like whatever, like he thought he would find Jason maybe on the edge, right? Because I guess that's kind of how he was when they all last saw him. But he's not on the edge. It's perfectly fine, actually. He had built an entire life for himself outside of them and away from them, right? He's got a whole family. So that's clearly not going to happen. This is technically and obviously like Tim meeting Danny for the first time and really seeing him in general and the kids and all of them. So the first conversation of Tim or Danny, calling Tim, it's like, oh, Jason said you were like a really good inventor. It's like, oh, you could like to like Danny often has like something to bond over, like, oh, inventing something like in the lab, because he's already building something, and he's kind of stuck. He's like, oh, maybe you could help me with it, set of eyes. And Tim is taking it's like, oh, like he agrees, but only in terms of like if it's something like he has to stop, like it could be a chance to sabotage it. Like he's already like, oh, I wonder what the League is building, which he's like, I wonder what they're building. Like it can't be anything good. And then a small little child argument goes between Dan and Ellie, and then he ends up kicking her, and she's like, he kicked me. And it's like, all right, if you want to fight, like at least do that with training, like in the morning tomorrow. And Jason, laughs at it because that's how they are, right? And Tim is like, oh god, he's making a lot of assumptions in this. Right? It's like making a lot of assumptions in this, right? Because obviously he doesn't know that Danny and like Ellie and Dan aren't really like in the league. They're just kind of there, right? They follow some rules always. They're like, oh, training, sure. That'd be dumb not to have it. Like with assassination bound to come their way, even no matter how adorable they are. But it's just like they don't really go on missions or anything. That's not like their thing. They're not assassins. But Tim doesn't know that, so obviously he's making a lot of assumptions here. Like, oh my god, the children are even training and all this. I mean, he still sees clearly that they're love, like raised with love and happiness and everything. But like the idea is like, oh god, 3-year-olds training, kind of horrifying. But the first time, this is where Tim is really realizing, yeah, he can't take Jason, right? Like like his original plan where he's talking with like of convincing him to leave. He's not gonna leave. He built a life for himself here. He's not leaving. You'd have to take him by force. And, Tim's thinking about this, like, I've possibly taken by force away from, his fiance and, his kids, or even, like, because there's no way he's leaving them, right? So he thinks about, like, even, he would have to take all 3 of them too, right? But, again, doesn't have any of the resources to do that. He can't do that. So he comes to the conclusion, as they kind of look at each other, Jason even nods to him, like kind of knowing what he's gonna do. Because again, it's not a secret. Tim's gonna leave. He's not staying. So, they have a silent acknowledgement, like a silent goodbye, basically, because Jason knows no plans on stopping him either, doesn't care. And Tim acknowledges in that moment he can't take Jason, right? For right now, he's untouchable. Kieran for right now. But there's a clear indication like he's gonna come back for him when, because right now Bruce is the priority since he's missing. But once that's solved, like, and no doubt when he tells Bruce, he'll come in guns blazing and everything, to get Jason back. So there'll definitely be like a confrontation between everything. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they'll be gone before then, depending on what they're building. I don't know, because it could be. Because again, Danny doesn't have to stay. He just chooses to stay. Because by now the kids are born and everything. He could just go back to the Infinite Realms. So who's to say he won't take Jason there? And by the time they get back, they're already gone. He'll never know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye!